To create a database, the first thing we need to do is to create a file where we can store all our access objects in, just like the database here. And the name of the file here that contains our access objects is up here on the title bar to the left of the colon. It's called Books. Now, if you already have a database open and you want to create a new one, you don't have to close out of the database here and reopen Access to be able to get the startup screen, as you recall in earlier training videos, so you can get the templates to choose, well, one of the templates there. Instead, just leave the database open and come up here and click on the File tab, Backstage to New, and there's the templates. So you can go ahead and choose one, like if your database is going to be about students, you want to track them and you don't want to create it from scratch. In that, it'll have tables, forms, reports regarding tracking students that you can go ahead and work with and tweak, as opposed to a blank database where it's got no access objects. So you can go ahead and click on Students and read more about it. And if you like what you see, then go ahead and create it. But if not, and you want to go to, like, let's say the first one, the blank database, of course you can go ahead and close out of here and click on it, or let's go to the custom web app. You got these arrows to go back or forward in the template section here. So let's go back to the first one. There you go, blank database. Now we're going to go ahead and create a blank database, and the reason why is because, well, it's blank and it has no access objects in there, so I can show you how to create a table from scratch, and then after the table, then queries, forms, and reports. So all you have to do here is give it a name. We can go with the generic database 1, but that ain't doing it for me. So we can go ahead and click inside of here, and notice the dot and the extension to the name, ACCDB. That tells the operating system what program to open up this file in. Now when you delete this and give it a new name, you don't have to add the extension .accdb. It will know to automatically add it for us, but in any case it's there. As a reminder, that's the Access program, the Access DB for database. And if you want to learn more about extensions, then you can watch my Windows training video on extensions. But in any case, let's go ahead and give this a name. In my database that I want to go over in these training videos is going to be Computer Inventory. Now right now it's going to be saving it to the desktop, and if I don't want it on the desktop, I want it somewhere else to save or to create this file in, then go ahead and click on the Browse button here. And there's my desktop, and in the main window on the desktop, let's put it in the Exercises folder, so double click. Ooh, along with the books. That's good. And then just go ahead and click Okie dokie, so it updates the path, and it says we're going to dump it in the Exercises folder on the desktop. And then you can see right there how it automatically added the .accdb. Well, even if I come to the end and I delete that and I just click on Create, which is the final step, there you go, it created it. And up here on the title bar, hey, Computer Inventory, the name of my database, as opposed to the one that we saw about books, which had the name way over here. Well, now it's over to the far right, and then it's got the colon and the address of where it can be found. Now once it's created, it opens it up with the first access object ready to go, and you can see it's a generic Table 1, and if you don't like that, well, when you save it, you can go ahead and rename it to, well, whatever data you want to start entering in. Like if it's about computers, then this could be the table on computers. And you got your first field here, it's called ID. Again, you can go ahead and change that, but typically it starts off with an ID, but I digress because here we just want to create a file that will store our access objects in. But it does prompt you with table, because without tables you have no raw data to be able to work with, with your queries, forms, and reports. So even if you close out of here and you're like, oops, I didn't mean to do that, that's okay. Next training video I'm going to show you how you can create your tables, or if you left it open, how we can go ahead and continue working with that generic table and make it ours. Customize it, tweak it with that one field, the ID field. And there we go. Once we close out of that table, now the title bar updates instead of being crammed over to the far right because it had those related contextual tabs that were tied to the table that was selected. So now that those tabs are out of the way because the table is not selected, or in this case gone, removed, it flushes far left, and you can see the name Computer Inventory, then colon, and then the address. And so the address, let's close out, remember, is on our desktop in the Exercises folder. Double click. There's Books, and hey, there's our database, and it added the extension. Now on your computer, you may not see the extensions, the .accdb, because by default Windows has them turned off. I turn them on because sometimes people send me files and it's got a blank little icon here, and when I double click on it, the computer says, or the operating system says, I don't know what program to open up this file in. And so it may be that it has no extension, and so we need to learn about extensions like docx is for documents and .xlsx is for Excel. Well, in any case, you can go ahead and learn more about extensions in my Windows training video on extensions, but by default they're turned off because if you do delete them, like if I right click here and I go down to rename, and you see how it focuses on the left hand side, not the right hand side, so you can go ahead and type over computer inventory, but if I monkey with this over here and delete that and hit enter, it says you're changing the file name extension and it will probably become unstable. Not only that, but we won't know what program to open this up in. If I say yes, you see how it goes blank, just like the look that you're giving me now, like, hey, what's that about? Well, if you double click on this, it says I can't open this file because I don't know what program this belongs to. Click cancel, right click on it, go down to rename. Let's add that extra B, hit enter. Yes, we want to change it. And hey, it knows to tie that to that program here. So when I double click on it, that's nice. We're back to our computer inventory. So don't monkey with those extensions. And if you can't see them, probably best not to turn them on. If you want to turn them on so you can more readily identify the programs that it'll open up in or belong to, or what version of program, again, you can watch my Windows training video on extensions. Now that we created a database file, which we learned how to do in the previous training video, we're going to now create our first access object in that file, a table. Again, a table is where we enter and store our raw organized data into. Then once we have some data, we can then add additional objects to work with that data, our queries, forms, and reports. Now in the previous training video when we created our database file, Access automatically had a table ready for us to work with. But I closed out of mine because I wasn't ready to add any fields to that table. But now that I'm ready, let's go ahead and create that table. Come up here on the ribbon and let's go to the Create tab. That makes sense. I want to create something. Click on it. Go to the Tables group. I'm going to create a table. Now before I go ahead and click on Table, you're probably wondering, well, can't we do it in Design? Well, you can see in the other groups here, there's more than one way to create your forms, queries, and reports. But we'll keep it simple, and I'll go over that later on. For right now, let's go ahead and create a table in the datasheet view as opposed to the design view. And we'll cover both. But first off, let's create a new blank table in datasheet view. Click on it, and we're back to where we started in the previous training video before we closed out of the table. So we have a generic table that's listed over here in the navigation pane under the Headings table. And instead of Table 1, well, I want to give it a name because my database is computer inventory, or keeping track of our company's computers. And so the data that I need is a table for computers. So let's go ahead and rename that. You can do that by simply saving it. So if it's the first time you're saving your table, just come up here, click on Save, and it will force a Save As. So you can go ahead and update the name here. Instead of Table 1, let's do Computers. Now before I go ahead and click OK, as you recall in an earlier training video, when you're working in the back end, the design views of like forms and reports and other areas in Access, when I wanted to be able to assign a table or even a query to that report or to base that report or form upon, if I have the same name for the table as I do for a query, when I want to choose which object I want to base that report or form upon, if they have the same name, there's no way to identify that it's the table as opposed to a query. Now you can do it here because it's going to be under the corresponding heading. So I can have computers here for the table and computers for the query, and it will be under the query heading. But on the back end, in some of the areas like forms and reports, you don't get that lovely option. So either don't have them named the same name and have them memorized, what names are your tables, what names are your queries, or to try to keep it simple, especially if you're going to be handing this off to somebody else at some point in time, to give it a 3-letter prefix before your name that identifies this as a table. So, well, you can do more than 3 letters. You can type out table, but the naming convention typically is just 3 letters, TBL, table. Then if it's a query, QRY, form FRM report RPT, and then click Okie dokie, and there we go. And it's updated here. Now the first field that's been created for us already is the ID field. And what Access is trying to tell us is that when you're creating your tables and you're adding fields here, there ought to be a field that is unique, that is not going to contain any duplicates, that will uniquely identify each record. So for example, if you have a customers table or an employees table and you have a field for their first name, last name, street address, phone number, and so on, if you have hundreds or thousands of them, what's the chance that you're going to have an employee or a customer with the same first name? So we can't narrow it down when we're looking for a Bob, because we may have like 5 or 10 Bobs. You could go to the last name and say, okay, the last name is Smith. That may not be helpful. So you see what I'm saying? So what it's doing here is it's got an ID field that when you enter a record in for the first record and go to the next one, well, let me go ahead and click in that field. You'll be able to see up here on its related contextual tabs for the table tools, the fields in the table, but we're looking at the fields right now. Over here in the formatting group, the type of data or data type that can be entered into that field is an auto number, and it's just like it sounds. It's going to automatically generate a number in that field for each record. What kind of number? Well, it's going to start with the smallest number 1. So you type in your first record and it's going to have 1. Second record, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, as many records as you enter therein. So that way it's always going to be unique to identify each record. But you don't have to use the default here if you don't like, and I'll show you later on how you can go ahead and change that up. And for your employees, you may want to change this to like their social security number, because that's a unique identifier for each employee. So it's just trying to help you out. You don't have to go with what they got. You can go ahead and customize it, change it, but as a reminder, make sure you got a field that is unique to each record, or that's going to be different and not be a duplicate like 1-1 or 1-2, or have the same first names, or can't have any duplicate last names. So that's why we got a unique identifier here. And for my computer table, or if you have other products like books, software, one way to identify your products and my computers uniquely is by the asset tag or the barcode UPC symbol. So let me go ahead and update the label here, and I'll update the data type so it doesn't automatically generate 1, because there's no UPC symbol out there or asset tag that just has 1. So for right now, let's just go ahead and show you how you can update the label here by double clicking on it. You can see it aligns it over to the left hand side. That means it's in edit mode. Just simply start typing. And there you go. When you're done, hit enter, it accepts it, and it goes to the next field, and it opens up a shortcut menu for the data type or type of data that you like to be entered into that field before you can go ahead and enter in a label for that field. So you can have text enter into the field, and there's 2 different types for your text. You can have short text or long text. And the difference between the two, to make your database more efficient, you want to choose short text if you're going to have 255 characters or less in that field. But if you have just one record that's going to contain more than 255 characters, then you're going to have to go with long text. And of course, you can have numbers in there or a number you enter to be formatted in currency. So what type of data do you want to be able to, the front-end user, enter into that field? And for this one, it's going to be short text. Once I select the type of data that can be entered, it goes to the name for the field, and field 1, well, that doesn't tell me what I'm supposed to be entering into that field, so I just simply type over it. And it's going to be the manufacturer for the computers. Once I'm done, hit enter, and then it goes to the next field. It says, okay, select the type of data that can be entered into that field, and then you can choose a name for it, and it'll keep on going and going, and let's click off and call it good for the moment. And right now I'm looking at the manufacturer field, and it's kind of cut off. So if you want to be able to see the entire label for that field, or be able to see more of the contents when you have data down below for the first record, second record, and so on, just go ahead and hover up in between the 2 column headers until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then you can go ahead and click and drag, and it pushes the field on the right over to the right, but stretches the one to the left. So it stretched it open. That looks beautiful. Or let me click off. Of course, you can click and drag and squish it back in, but then, man, what's that about? So in addition to clicking and dragging, you can do what's called a best fit, that when you hover in between those 2 column headers, just double click really fast, and it automatically fits to the longest text within the column and its manufacturer. Now in the front view here, in the datasheet view, if you're curious about what type of data can be entered into the field, or you want to update it and change the data type, as long as it's not too late. And what I mean by that is, like, if I click back in the manufacturer label here, so it selects the entire, well, label and column. Up here in the related contextual table tools, the Fields tab, you can go to the formatting group and there's the short text, and then if you want to change that to long text, well, that makes sense. But if you have it long text and you have records already in here, where you have one that has 300 and you want to truncate it down to short text to 255, you'll cut it off, and it will warn you about that, so you want to be careful about, once you set your database up, if you want to go from something more to less, it will cut it down and you lose your data if you're not careful. And you can see the field size for that field is 255. If you want to come in here and make it less, 10, hit enter, that's fine. So the maximum amount of characters you can type in the field is 10, but the limit for short text is 255. So if I come in here and I try to go 256 and hit enter, it says, you can't do that, okay? Because the max is 255. Okay, click okie dokie, and then let's just go back to 255. Now that's designing your table in the front end, or the datasheet view, where you can, well, design it and also enter in data in that view. Now that's the front end view, the datasheet view, where you can design it and also enter in data, as opposed to the other view, which is just the design view. You can change views by coming up here on the Fields tab in the Views group and click on the ruler pencil, goes to the design view. It brings up the property sheet. I don't need to see that just right now. Let's close out of it. And there you go. You can see that up here, the related contextual table tools tab is design. So that's one way to find out you're in the design view besides the different view. And also over here in the Views group, you got the sheet for the data sheet if you want to go back to the data sheet. But in any case, here you go. You've got your design where you can go ahead and type in your field name, the data type or type of data, and then a description, as when I select in the field down below, it says it helps you to describe the field and is also displayed in the status bar when you select this field in a form. Oh, that's nice. So you can give the front-end user help if you create a form based upon this table by typing in what that field's about. So when they get to that field, they can look down below as it says on the status bar here, that tells them the purpose of the field if they need help. And of course it's optional. And sometimes it's helpful when you're designing a database is to let the next person know, or as a reminder, if you design it and then it's going to be a while before you get back into it and you need to restructure it, what these fields are for. And then we've got the manufacturer, the short text, and then down below we've got the field properties. So if we want to go ahead and add another field, just click in the next available cell down below and type in the field's name. Now let's go ahead and enter another field for our table, but this time in the design view. Ooh, that's so exciting. Let's go ahead and just type in date received. So we're going to have the date when we received our computers. Hit the tab key. And the default data type or type of data is short text, and that's not date. So let's go ahead and change that to date/time. And then I can hit the tab key and type in a description if I'd like. Now for the date time, the format, if I want to have it displayed in short or long format, how the month is spelled out, and maybe include the time or not include the time, well, to go ahead and change the property for that field or the field properties, then let's just come down here with any one of these cells selected for that field. It doesn't have to be the field name. It could be the data type for that field or the description for that field. Once you have one of those cells selected for that field, then just come down below into the field properties and click in the format. Now you can come down here and click in the cell, that works, or if you're up here you can hit the F6 key on the keyboard, automatically takes you down to the field properties, the first cell, the format field. And then over to the far right of the field, you get a little drop down arrow, go ahead and click on it. Hey, there we go. So we can have the general format, general date. You can have the long date. Whew, it's a bit too long. Let's have something that doesn't include such lengthiness, and let's do a short date. Select that, and so that's going to be the format for that field when we enter in a date that we receive the computers. And then after I select that format, you get a lightning bolt. Go ahead and hover over it. It gives you a property update option that you can click on. and it says you can update the format everywhere the date received is being used. So when I update it in the table, if I have a form report based upon this table, I can also update that format in the forms and reports, which is nice because maybe I just want it in the table and not to display the short date or update it to the other objects within the database. But since I don't have any other objects when I click on it, it says no objects needed to be updated. Okay. Now before we go any further, if you need to reorganize your fields, like you want the date received to be first, you can go ahead and hover over on the row header, the gray box for any one of these fields, and you get a black arrow pointing to the right. Go ahead and click on it, and it selects the entire row or that field. Then once it's selected, you can go ahead and click on it again, and then notice that gray fuzzy box below my pointer. That means it's got a hold of something. And so once I got a hold of it and not letting go of the left mouse button, I can go ahead and move it up. And wherever that black line is, not necessarily the pointer, as you can see the pointer is just barely touching the first row header there. It doesn't mean it's going to dump it right between the asset tag and manufacturer or move it between the two. So if I want to be able to move the date received above the manufacturer, then the black line's there. Let go, and there you go. And then to move it back, of course, click and drag and move it back. Now if you have more than one field to move around at the same time, then go ahead and click on one and drag down to the next, and then let go of the mouse. Then go ahead and click on any one of those row headers to select both of them. And then of course you can move both of them at the same time. You got that option. You can also, let me click off, right click on the row header, and you get other options like you can add additional rows, delete rows, cut, and then paste your rows around. In any case, clicking and dragging is easier for me unless you've got a lot of rows. Then clicking this row down to, well, row 25, that gets a bit touchy. So maybe I just want to go ahead and right click to cut, and then right click to paste. But let me go ahead and click on that to select it and click and drag it back up so I can reorder it the way I had it before we started messing with that. Let's go ahead and add another field. This one's going to be the purchase price. Hit the tab key, and because we're dealing in dollars, let's go ahead and choose, click on the drop down arrow, currency. Or are we really dealing with dollars? Maybe we're dealing in a foreign currency, so we may want to change the formatting for the data type. With it selected, you can hit the F6 key on the keyboard. Takes me right down to the properties for that field. And with currency selected, we can click on the drop-down arrow, and we can change it from the default US dollars or whatever country you're in the default is and choose something else like the euro or something fixed standard. Let's go back to just currency. And then below that, you can change the decimal places. The default's automatic. You can also click on its far right arrow and say that you want 0 decimals. And then, of course, you can go ahead and click on the tag to update that feature, not just in the table, but to all the other Access objects. And if you need help on any one of these fields, like, okay, what's decimal places about? You can look over to the right and get a short little blurb on it, or if you want even more details, with the cursor flashing in the decimal places field in this example, go ahead and hit the F1 key on the keyboard. Opens up the internet. And there you go, decimal places property access. And it says, hi there, you've landed on here because you hit F1 to get some help. Now what help do you want? Do you want the decimal places for the combo box? We haven't covered that yet. Or for the text box, which is what we're covering right now. So let's go ahead and click on that. And it gives us a blurb. You can use the decimal places properties to specify the number of decimal places Microsoft Access uses. You can go ahead and read that. Let's scroll down. Get a little bit more particular here. Because you had two different settings, you had the auto and then you have, well, the numbers you can choose between 0 to 15. Now for the auto, it says the numbers appear as specified by the format properties setting. As opposed to, well, choosing your own number, not having it done automatically, where it says the digits to the right of the decimal separator appear with the specified number of decimal places. So to the right, you could have 0 decimal places. Cool. In any case, you can learn more about that in greater detail in any one of these fields down below by clicking in it. If it's not good enough for what you have over here, you want more details, well, like it says, F1 for help as what I have selected there. And let's go ahead and add another field. This one's going to be the warranty. Hit the tab key. Now for the warranty, we could say yes, they have it, or no, they don't. So instead of typing in 3 letters, YES for yes, let's go ahead and change it to yes or no. That way we can become more efficient in our data entry if I don't have to type it all in, but have a box that I can check. For the warranty, checked yes or unchecked no. And in fact, let's go down to the field properties for that and click in the format field, and there's the yes no. You can also click on the drop down arrow and say true. They do have it, or false, or on or off, but well, that doesn't make sense, but nonetheless you can choose depending upon what the purpose of your field. So in this case for the warranty, yes they have it, or no they don't. Now that our table is completed, let's go ahead and go to the datasheet view and start entering in data for all the fields, creating a record. So let's come back up here, and to switch views, click on the view button. Oh, it wants us to save the table first before we switch views. So let's go ahead and say yes. And there we go. Hey, cool. Well, except they're being cut off here, so I can double click in between the column headers to do a best fit, right? Click, great, click off. So to start entering in data for my first computer, we've got our asset tag, which is going to be a number generated automatically for me. It's going to be number 1, and we'll leave that like that for now. And then for the manufacturer, well, I have 3 manufacturers that I purchased my computers from. And right now the front-end user can go ahead and type in the name of the manufacturers, and they are Atlas, High-Tech, and Micron. You can imagine if I have a bunch of front-end users entering in data here at the same time, and they want to enter in Atlas, but maybe they don't spell it correctly, so it could be A-T-L-E-S, L-I-S, L-A-S. Well, technically, if they misspell it, that many Atlases, then I'll have 3 different manufacturers or more. And so if I want to be able to control the input so there's only one Atlas that is spelled correctly with an A-T-L-A-S and not any other misspelled words, then what I can do is I can go ahead and convert this field into a lookup. So I can control the data entered into that field and not have a bunch of misspelled manufacturers. So to do that, let's go back to the design view, and we can right click on the tab, go to design, go to the manufacturer field, and instead of just typing in some text, we want to click on the drop down arrow and say we want to do a lookup wizard. Click on that, and it opens up the wizard, and Microsoft has wizards that it'll do something magical for you. Well, basically it'll ask a bunch of questions, and depending upon your answers, it'll create, in this case, a field that will look up the values that we want to see in that field. So you can either have the lookup field gather values from another table or query, which I don't have another one, or we can just go ahead and type in the values that we want to see in that field. We'll keep it simple. We'll choose that and click Next. And it says, what kind of values do you want to see in your lookup field? Enter the number of columns you want in the list. Now, as far as the columns go, why would you want additional columns than just the initial column to look up the value? Like for the manufacturers, I have 3, Atlas, High-Tech, and Micron. The reason why you may want more columns if you want to get more descriptive. Like for example, just come down below and type in 2 and hit the tab key, and we've got 2. So I can type in the manufacturer, and then in column 2, like 3 out of 4 stars. They're a great manufacturer. Now for column 1, you want to make sure it's going to be unique and you don't have duplicates. For column 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter. So I can go ahead and say the same thing about, well, High-Tech and Micron, 3 out of 4 stars. They're a great manufacturer in column 2. Whatever I want to enter into the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, or 5th columns. But I want to go ahead and keep it simple. Let's go back to just one column, hit the tab key, and type in the name of my 3 manufacturers, Atlas, and then you can see a little pencil. I'm in write mode until I go ahead and hit the tab key and go to the next blank cell to enter in the next manufacturer, tab, and then Micron. And then go ahead and hit tab, and I've got the 3. Now you can go ahead and adjust the column here if you'd like by hovering over the right hand side until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, and click and drag to make it bigger, or do a double click to do a best fit to the longest text within the column, which looks like it's High-Tech, and that's good. Let's go ahead and click Next, and then what name do we want to give it? We'll keep it the same, manufacturer. And then do you want to limit the entry to the choices? So when I check limit to list, it means that they can't choose anything but what's in the list. Or I can allow multiple values, meaning that for the 3, if they want to choose Atlas and High-Tech or all 3, then they have that option, because maybe the hard drive was manufactured from Atlas, the processor from High-Tech. Well, in any case, let's keep it simple. If I don't check any of these, the default will be to limit it to the list. So to save you time, if you want to keep it limited to the list, then just click Finish. And there you go. Well, I know it says data type short text. Access doesn't update it to say lookup, so you'll just have to trust me. And let's go ahead and click Save and take a look at it by clicking on the View button to go to the datasheet view. Now the first field that I can actually enter data into is going to be the manufacturer, because remember the asset tag has the auto number assigned to it, so it's automatically going to generate a number for us for each record. So we'll leave that alone. So the front end user, if they watch my training videos, they'll see the word new. That means that the data type for that field is auto number, and to just go ahead and leave it alone. Nothing more to see here. Just go to the next field. So manufacturer. Go ahead and click in it, and hey, you get the drop-down arrow, a lookup field. Let's click on it to see what we want to look up, and we can choose Atlas. Oh, isn't that nice? Now you can do it that way, or let me hit the delete key. If I type in the letter M, it's going to pull up all the M's, and if I continue on typing, I can narrow it down to, well, in this case, micron. And then hit the tab key, the date received. You can either go ahead and type it in like 1/1/2017, hit the tab key, or let's go back and clear it. We can click on the date picker and choose a date, or let's go ahead and hit the backspace key and delete that. If you want today's date, hold down the control key and hit colon, and cool. There we go. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key and go to the purchase price. Let's do 1,000. It doesn't have it in dollars until I escape out of it by hitting tab. And if I made a mistake and I want to go back, well, you can use the mouse. But instead, if you want to keep your hands on the keyboard, then hold down the shift key, hit the tab key, and it goes backwards. Then I can go ahead and update it to 1200, hit the tab key, and then for the warranty, yes, go ahead and check it, and you don't have to use the mouse, but you can. Instead, you can use the spacebar to remove the check or to add the check. And then when you're done, you can see over to the far left, it's in write mode. That's why you got that little pencil there. To save your record, you can do it one of many ways. One way is just to simply go to the next record down below, even if it's a blank one, to enter in a new record. And you can see when I click down below, the pencil's gone. That means it's been saved. So if I come back up here and make any edits, a change, you can see it's in write mode. You can go ahead and save it by coming up here, clicking on the Save button, and it saves it. Or let's go ahead and update that again. You can see it's in write mode, the little pencil. Another way to save it is Shift-Enter, the two keys there on the keyboard. Or let's go ahead and update this again. Let's go to 1700 by simply closing out of it. Yeah, do you dare me? Okay, 1700, close out. Let's go ahead and double click to open it back up, and hey, it's still there. So as far as the tables go, you really don't have to do anything except just to make sure that you close out of it when you want to save it. But that brings up a good point. What if I'm in here and I type like a change here for the purchase price to 1600, and I change the date received to another date, and I'm like, wait a second, I need to go back to the way it was. I don't want to save any of these changes. Instead of trying to remember and clearing it out, you can see it's in write mode. Go ahead and hit the escape key once, and it reverts back to the way it was. Hit it twice, and it reverts the other one back to the way it was. So you got a step-by-step process. Hitting the escape key for the most recent change, it reverts back to it. Hitting the escape key a second time reverts the first change back from 1600 to 1700. So keep hitting that escape key to go from the most recent change to the next until you hit it enough that it backs out completely to the original record here before you start making changes to it. And then to go ahead and enter in a new record, well, if you already have 2000 entered here and you're on record 1, you want to go to the new record row. As you recall, you can come down here and click on new blank record. It takes you right to it. Or if you're up here and you want to go down, you can do the arrow down key, or, well, if you're towards the end here, let me click on that, hit the tab key, and it goes right down to the next one. Hit the tab key, then the manufacturer. This time, I'm not going to use the mouse. I'll do A for Atlas, date received. Let's type in 1/2/2017, tab. Let's do 1000, tab key. We're good. And to be able to save this without using the mouse, I can go ahead and do Shift-Enter, and it's saved, or I can go ahead and hit the down arrow key to go to the next row, even if it's a blank row for the new record, or even going up, it'll save it as well. If you want to be able to share your table with someone who doesn't have Access installed on their computer, so you can't send them your database, what you can do instead is export your table into an XPS or PDF file format. Now the XPS is a Microsoft format that allows you to open it up with the Microsoft XPS viewer, and that comes with Microsoft's latest operating system like Windows 7 and on. And so let's go ahead and do that. We got our computers table, double click. It has 2 records. Let's go ahead and close out. With the table selected, come up here and click on External Data, and go to Export, and there you go, one-stop shopping. Either PDF or XPS. Go ahead and click on it. And let's come over here and save it to the desktop. And the default's PDF. Why don't we go ahead and change that to XPS, and then go ahead and publish it. And voila, opens it up right here in the XPS viewer. Cool. So we can go ahead and take a gander and go, oh, that's what you got in your table. Oh, that's nice. And then say, well, you forgot this other computer with the ASIC tag 3, and you can tell them, hey, wait a second, I'm still doing data entry. And in any case, you can collaborate over the XPS file here if they don't have access to the Access program, either through the internet or installed on their computer. So let's go ahead and close out of here. And then it says, do you want to save these export steps? And that's very handy later on when something's a bit more step intensive, because here, I mean, it was just a single click and it opened up. But when I have more steps and there's more processes to be able to get the data that I want exported from Access, then I may want to save it so I don't have to click as many times. And we'll go over that in a later training video, but since this was so simple and clean, let's go ahead and close out. And let's do it again. This time when we click on PDF or XPS, again, we got our table selected still. We'll go to the desktop, change it from XPS, and you can see it right there. That's what it looks like, and there's the extension .xps. Let's go ahead and change it to PDF, which is Adobe's Acrobat program, and most people will have that installed on their computer, at least the reader, so they can go ahead and read this PDF file format. If not, you can go to adobe.com and be able to download their free Acrobat reader. So in any case, we've got it in PDF file format. Let's click on Publish. And there we go. It opened it up in Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat right there. And that's really fancy. And the thing I like about PDF that you can't do in XPS is that you can go ahead and highlight the text. Well, that's fancy. Maybe add some sticky notes. Getting even more fancy. And so let's go ahead and close out of here. And you can save the steps. Well, it's just a single click. I don't have anything else outside of that. So let's go ahead and minimize that down to the taskbar. Look on the desktop, there's the XPS file, and here's the PDF. And double click to open up the XPS, and there you go. Do you have any tools up here to go ahead and highlight or add sticky notes? Well, you can click on the file format, permissions, signatures. No, it's the bare bones. You can't add your own personal notes or highlight parts of it. And so, well, you'd probably have to print it off and get out the old fancy highlighter if you want to highlight a few things. In any case, they'll be able to view this on their computer. Either XPS viewer, if they have a Microsoft computer. If they don't have Microsoft or Windows computer, then PDF it. Table structuring is copying and or exporting a table and choosing the type of structure to go with it, like maybe just the fields. Or you can include the data with the fields when pasting or exporting it into another database. So you can see up here the name of this database is CI for Computer Inventory 2 Relationships. And down below I have a total of 4 tables. Let's go ahead and open up the Employees table with a double click. And you can see I've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 fields. Now table structuring can be very helpful. For example, if I want to make a backup of my Employees table before I make any updates, that way if I make any mistakes or do some uh-ohs, I'll have a backup. Or if I have a table that has a lot of similarities to a new table that I want to create, which can include the same field names or the same data type or type of data. And let's go ahead and close out of here and do some structuring. To do it, all you have to do is go ahead and right-click on the table that you want to structure and go down to Copy. It's that simple, yeah. And then just go ahead and right-click anywhere within the navigation pane to Paste. Or, of course, you can come up here on the Home tab in the Clipboard group and click on that big fat Paste button right there. Go ahead and click on it, and it'll bring up the same window. And it gives us 3 options. When you paste, you can just include the structure or just the fields, or you can include the fields and the data if there's any data from that table that you're copying from. Or you can append the data to an existing table. But to do this one, you have to have the same fields and the same data type, because it doesn't make sense for Access to paste a field with the data type of text into a date field. So let's go ahead and do the first one, structure only, and leave it as copy of our table that we're copying from, and say okie dokie. And there we go. And let's go ahead and double click on it, and it just included the fields with the same data type as the table before. How do you know? Well, you can come in here and come up here and click on the Field tab. Go to the Formatting group. There's short text, and this one should be number. So when I go to the employees, well, number for the first one, number for the last one, and then short text for that one. Okay. So let's go ahead and close out of that. We've got the backup, and to get rid of it, if you're like, I don't really need it, right click on it and go down to delete. Are you sure? Yes. Let's go ahead and do it again because it's still on the clipboard. You can see it's still active. Click on paste, and this time we'll do the default, the structure with the data, and instead of copy of, how about if we rename that to our backup? Oh yeah. And then hit enter on the keyboard, and there's our backup. So if we open up the original employees table, double click, and we start going just crazy, or making changes, and you can see there's the pencil, and I go down to the next record, it saves it. Or better yet, if I go ahead and click on the row header, you see the black arrow? When I'm on that gray box, the row header, click on it, selects the entire row, and if I come up here on the Home tab to the Records group, I can destroy it. Let's go ahead and click on delete. And once you delete a record, you can't bring it back. Are you sure? Yes. And you're like, uh-oh, I'm supposed to keep that employee. In any case, no worries. We have a backup. That's what that's for. So we can close out. Go ahead and remove all evidence that you made a mistake in the original by deleting it and saying, yes, you want to delete it. But it says, well, we got a lot of stuff on the clipboard. We got to clear that first before you can delete the table. Okay, and it's gone. Then double click and open up the backup, and hey, still there, Clancy Wiggums. Nice. And then to make sure that we remove any evidence that we had to go to the backup, we can, of course, right click on it and rename it, or just better yet, you want this to be original now. You'll probably want to delete the word backup and then hit enter. And then, of course, go ahead and right click on that, copy, paste it, and then rename the second one as your backup so we can start that over again and have a backup to our employees before we proceed with any more changes. Now let me go ahead and right click on this and go down to copy again so I can get it back on the clipboard. So when I click on paste, we've got the third and final option, append data to an existing table. And we'll go over that in just a minute because I don't have a table, well, the employees table that I'm copying from that has another table that has the same field names and data type. So we'll do that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and click cancel. And let's learn how to do this to another database, going from one to another. We can, of course, go ahead and right-click and copy the table and then minimize this down to the taskbar. Because on my desktop, in my exercises folder, double-click, I have another database, and it's the books. And you're probably looking down here and wondering, what's this about? We've got CI2, which we're in. How come there's a duplicate, or what appears to be a duplicate of it? Well, this one, I don't know if you can see the icon. It's got a little teeny tiny lock. And you can see the extension has an L in front of the ACCDB for locked. When you hover over it, it says in the pop-up, Microsoft Access Record Locking Information. But when I close out of the database, then it opens up and it removes this locked, this ghosting as it were, the shadow. In any case, let's go ahead and just open up the other database, books, double-click. And in here, do we see any employees tables? No. So we can go ahead and paste it here, or better yet, let me go back to the original database, and instead of opening up another database to get a copy of the table over into it, let's just go ahead and right-click on it, and how about if we export it? Sound a little bit more efficient? Well, it does to me at this point because I wouldn't have had to open up the other database first to be able to paste it in there if I can just leave this one open, the original, and export it to it. So we can come over and go down to Access, and it says, where's this Access database, or the books database that we want to export it to? Well, come with me, good neighbor, and click on the Browse button. Takes me to the desktop, and on the desktop in the main window is the Exercises folder, so double-click. And there's my books, double-click. Now it has the address pointing right to it, so it knows where it's going to dump that or export that table into, or you could say copy and paste it into. Let's go ahead and click Okie dokie. And then you get two options. For exporting, you don't get the append data. You just get the definition and data, or just the definition only, or the name of the fields. So let's just go ahead and include definition only and click Okie dokie. And then at the end it says, hey, you want to save your steps when it comes to exporting? No, because it's just a couple of clicks, right click going down to export and then clicking on to export. You'll see in a later training video when we have something a little bit more intensive that requires a bunch of tweaking before we actually export the data that we want into another database, clean it up a bit, not have everything go. Well, that gets more step intensive, so it's something we'll save then, but for right now it's too simplistic, at least for what I want to show you. So let's go ahead and click close, and then go back to our books database by clicking on its corresponding button to maximize restore books. And do you see it here? Of course not, because we left it open. It's waiting out there in the foyer and it wants to come in, and if I closed out of the database and open it up, it would be in. So to welcome it, or to be able to see it, we want to refresh the database, as it were, and give it a personal invite when we already have it in use or in operation by hitting the F5 key on the keyboard, and there you go. Otherwise, like I said, close out, open it back up, it'll be there. Double click and hey, there's the structure. Isn't that nice? Now, we just have the structure. We've got the same fields and the same data type from the employees table in the other database. So if we want to go ahead and try that third option now, where we can append the records from the employees table in the computer inventory database into the employees table in the books database, well, let's go ahead and do it right now. We have to get it on the clipboard, but as you recall, I already got it on the clipboard, but if you need to, we can go back and come in here and then right click and say copy, then come back over here and then right click anywhere and say paste. Click and drag it down, and let's go ahead and append the data to an existing table. What table? You got to type in the same name of the table that you want to add the records into. And so if you add an extra S or something else, it's not going to work. So with the table name here, matching this one to add the data to, click Okie dokie, and it did it. How do you know? Because it's not showing here, is it? You can come up here on the Home tab and hit refresh, or you can hit the F5 key on the keyboard. We'll click refresh there, and oh, hey, there we go. Now that went smoothly because, again, you've got to have the same field name so it can map it, the employee ID to the employee ID, because if in the other table I had EID and this one employee ID, it wouldn't map, or it wouldn't know what field to pull that data into. So basically, when you do the append records, you're copying and pasting from one into another, and so you don't get any data integrity issues. When you're appending one table into another, it's got to have, as we discussed, the same fields and the same data type. A few tips I want to give you when it comes to managing your tables and or other objects, the least of which is when you delete a table, well, you can just go ahead and right click on it and go down to delete, or you can have it selected and hit the delete key on the keyboard and say yes, and it's gone. Now if you want to keep your tables but you don't want to see them, you can hide them. So if I want to hide the orders table, right click on it, and you can do it one of a couple of ways. You can either hide it in this group or go to the table properties and check hidden. Click OK. Okay, it's not hidden, but it has the attribute assigned to it. So to actually hide those that are meant to be hidden, we need to come up here and right click on the title bar for the navigation pane, or you can find a blank area down below and right click to get the navigation options. But let's come up here and right click to go to navigation options in case if you don't have any extra space down below. And we want to go ahead and uncheck show hidden objects, because we don't want to see those objects that are supposed to be hidden. When I click OK, watch the order table disappear. It's gone. Now to go ahead and bring it back, we need to undo that. Again, right click on the title bar, navigation options. We want to show it, click OK. It's back and it's in working order. You can double click on it and view the contents therein. Let me close out. But to bring it back to life, from going into the next life completely, let's go ahead and right click on it, go to table properties and uncheck hidden, click OK, and now it's solid and not faded. Now you can do that or right click on it and say you want to hide this group, and then of course set the properties for the navigation pane to not show those hidden objects. And then when you bring it back, right click to unhide the group. So it's either one or the other. You can do those options, hide it or unhide, or table properties to hide it. Let's go ahead and unhide. You can also hide an entire group of objects like our, well, let's do tables. Right-click on the title for the tables and say you want to hide it, and then they're all faded. So then we have to set the properties for the navigation pane to not show those hidden objects, but we've already done that. So let's go ahead and right-click on the title here to unhide. Or if you just want to show only the queries, of course you can click on these little collapsible arrows here to collapse them all, but let me expand it to quickly only see the queries. You can right click on the title for the group there, queries, and say that you want to show only queries, and it pulls it up. Nice. And then to bring it back, you can, well, right click in a blank area and say that you want to show all groups. Or if I right click again and say that I want to show only queries, of course you have the drop down arrow that you can click on and say that you just, well, maybe you just want to see tables. There's tables, click on it and say that you want to see all again. Now if you want to add a little bit more detail or a description about like maybe the orders table, like let's say I got it from somebody else so I haven't verified if everything's accurate, you can right click on it, go down to table properties again, and aside from hiding it, you can type in the description and say, I got this from Gomer Pyle's database, and then click OK. And of course, if you want to see the description, you can do it one of a couple of ways. You can either go ahead and right click of course and go back to read it, as well as typing in additional information, or you can change the view for the objects here by, well, let's right click on the title bar and go down to view by, and instead of list, how about if we do details? And there we go. We get the details when it was created, modified, but also we got our description. I got this from Gomer Pyle. Well, it's cut off because the navigation pane is only so wide. So let's go ahead and hover over the split bar between the navigation pane and the working area until I can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then click and drag it out. Hey, I can see a lot more, can I? Well, I don't want to see all of that. We'll leave it as such. So that way we can go ahead and view the description, the details. The other view that you got, let's right click on the title bar, view by. You can do it just by icon instead of by list. Ooh, that's nice. I like bigger icons. I'm more of a GUI type of guy, graphic user interface, but then you do need the title for the tables. But let's go back to the way it was. Right click, view by, and list. And then finally, if you want to go ahead and rename an object like query books, you can right click on it and just go down to rename. Call it query bookies. Well, in any case, when you're done, hit enter, it accepts it, but I'll right click and rename it and go back to the way it was. And hit enter. But keep in mind is that if you do rename like a table, and this query is based upon that table, like if I took out the letter S and just had customer, the query is not going to find it. So when you double click and it's like, I don't know what you're looking for, then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and redesign your query so it points to the rename table and be able to pull in the information from it. And we'll go over that a little bit more in a later training video. The primary key is a field you designate that uniquely identifies a record. So whenever you create a table, make sure you've got one field that's going to contain unique values only and no duplicates. As you can see here in my computers table, I've got the asset tag field or the barcode field that has the data type auto number assigned to it. As you can tell where it says new, that when I enter in a new record, well, I don't type over new because it's automatically going to generate a new number for me sequentially. So it goes from 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So there's no duplicates in that field, making it unique. But can you imagine if I went ahead and got rid of the asset tag field and I just had the manufacturer and all the others, that if I had a bunch more records that, well, were from the same manufacturer, same date received, purchase price and warranty, that if you came into this database and you saw all those duplicates, you might be tempted to go, oh, let me go ahead and clean this up and delete the duplicates, and that would be a boo-boo, a big fat no, because you'd be deleting my inventory. So to take care of that, we've got one field that's going to have no duplicates that uniquely identifies each computer, so you can see that, well, we don't have duplicates. We actually have this many computers. Now I know that the auto number is not a barcode, so I want to convert this into a simple number field where I can actually enter in the barcode that comes off of the computer into this field. And I wanted to leave the auto number up there so you can see what it looks like when you use the data type feature, how it automatically generates a number for each record for you. But let's get rid of it. So to do that, this is probably going to be the last video that I'm going to go over the different ways to change views. Like for the tab, you can right-click on it to go to the design view, or you can come up here on the Home tab to the Views group and either click on the drop-down arrow to switch and go to the other view, Design, or let me click off. The opposite view is going to be up here that you're in, and typically if it's Datasheet View, it's Design and Design Datasheet View in most of the objects. So let's go ahead and click on Design. You can see there's the asset tag, and then we've got the data type. Auto number automatically generates a number for each record that we add. And then over here in the row header for that field, you got this cute little key. Oh, isn't that nice? Well, that's the primary key that's been assigned to it. As you recall in an earlier training video, when you create a new table, Access automatically creates the first field for you. Well, let's do a review. Come up here, click on the Create tab, go to the Tables group, click on Table, and there's the generic table name until you save it, and there's the first field automatically created for you, defaulted with the generic name ID, and then the auto number data type assigned to it. Well, it's the only data type that in this view shows you new. So when you add in additional fields and you type in the data there and you save the record, it'll automatically convert this to, well, being the first record 1, and then sequentially 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And so if you had another table like for employees and you don't want a generic number for each employee, like, hey, you're number 1, you're number 2, you can go ahead and convert this or tweak it and rename it and call it like SS for Social Security number. And then, of course, go ahead and go to the design view and change it from auto number, because you don't want an automatically generated Social Security number. You want to be able to type in that number. In any case, let's go ahead and close out. And that's what we did here is we tweaked it. Well, almost. We got to change it from automatically generating a number, click in it, click on the drop-down arrow, to just a number that we can type in. Now, how big is that number or how small? In other words, we want our database to be as efficient as possible when we pull up data, especially if we have hundreds of thousands of records. It could slow it down a bit. And so what I mean by that is the field size. Are we entering in just a few numbers or large numbers into this field? Well, it's just a few numbers. So with the data type here, if we come down below into the field properties, into the field size, the default for the number data type is long integer. And you can come over here and read a synopsis about it and recommendations, but I want to stop us right here before you start reading it. You can go ahead and read it, but I want you to know that Access is a process when it comes to creating a database, and I can go off on a lot of tangents. So instead, let's go ahead and start with our building blocks, one video at a time, and then I'll introduce you to these other things like relationships in a later training video. That way, once we got the basics, we can start putting it together a lot easier than going off on tangents. So, Access is a process. Watch the videos. At least, hopefully you'll watch all the videos throughout the entire course so you got a great foundation, because there are things that I'm not covering here that will be addressed and a lot easier later on. So having said that, let's go ahead and continue and be patient. Just keep watching the videos. We've got the field size, which is long integer. You can go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow and go, well, I bet if it's not long integer must mean that it's a lot shorter. If you're like, I don't know what this means, just go ahead and make sure that the cursor is flashing in that field that you want more information about, like for the field size, and then hit the F1 key on the keyboard. Goes to Microsoft.com. Go ahead and scroll down and over, and there's the integer. Stores numbers in the tens of thousands, as opposed to long integer, which is, that's a lot. And you can see over here the storage size, just to have that field, is 2 bytes as opposed to 4 bytes, and so you want to make it as efficient as possible. If any one of the records throughout the hundreds of thousands for that field is going to be, well, anything larger than the tens of thousands, then you have to choose long integer for that field. Let's go ahead and close out and come down here, and we can click and change it to, let's just do integer. Now the primary key by default was assigned to the first field. We just renamed it and changed the data type so it could fit our situation. We want to keep track of not an auto number, just any number, but an actual asset tag or barcode. But if that's not the field that you want the primary key assigned to, maybe it's another field down below, well, I know it wouldn't make sense to put it for the purchase price because we're buying pretty much the same computer. It's all going to have the same price. But as far as assigning it goes, well, come up here, go to the Related Contextual Design tab, go to the Tools group, and there it is, Primary Key. And you can see when I click in the field here that has it assigned, that it's also highlighted there. So when I go to another field and I want to flip it, click on Primary Key, and it reassigns it from the Asset tag to the purchase price. But I don't want it to the purchase price, I want it to the Asset tag. Let's go ahead and click there and select Primary Key, and now we're back to where we started. Now the primary key isn't just something that says, hey, there should be no duplicates in this field. It's also a cop, a police officer. It will enforce this. So with it assigned to the asset tag, if you try to type in a duplicate number, you'll get busted. Not only that, but it won't allow any empty values either. Want to take it for a drive? Okie dokie. Let's come up here, switch views. You can go ahead and save it, but if you forget to save it and you switch the view by clicking on Datasheet, it'll prompt you to save it. Click yes, and here we go. Okay, so we don't have new down below in the new record, so we know it's not auto number anymore, in which case we have to go ahead and type in our own barcode. So to keep it simple, instead of typing in a bunch of long numbers, let's just go ahead and type in a number here, hit the tab key, and we'll do micron, hit the tab key, control colon to put in today's date, tab, let's do 1000, tab, or 100. Let's go ahead and hit the space bar and do warranty there. And you can see it's in write mode, so we haven't saved it yet. But notice that, well, in the asset tag column where I assigned it the primary key, it said there could be no duplicates. Well, if I save it right now, I'm going to get busted. Hold down the shift key and hit enter, and it says, oh, the changes you request to the table were not successful because they'd create duplicate values in the index, primary key, or relationship. Change the data in the field or fields that contain duplicate data, remove the index, or redefine the index to permit duplicate entries, and try again. Okay, I got busted. Let's click okie dokie. And so instead, the other thing that the primary key does, besides not allowing duplicates, is no blanks. So if I go ahead and click off to save it, it says, what are you doing? You got to have something in this field. Okay, busted again. So let's go ahead and type in something that's not already in that field, and then hold down the shift key, hit enter. Finally accepted. Now there are two more keys I want to introduce you to. I don't want to go over them in great detail. We'll cover those a bit later on, but as Access or building a database is a process, I want to introduce it to you so you can start thinking about it or familiarizing yourself with it. And to do that, let's go ahead and change views. Right click, go back to Design. And the first key that we went over was the primary key, which was assigned to one field. The next one is called a composite key, which is two or more fields assigned a primary key within the table. And to oversimplify, let's say we have an employees table where we just have the employee's first name and last name. Well, you may have some employees that have the same first name and some that have the same last name. Typically, I would say you don't have employees that have both the same first name and last name. And so what you do is you go ahead and say, okay, collectively between the two fields, the first name and last name, there can be no duplicates, and that would be a composite key. So to assign two or more fields the primary key, which once you assign it, if it's two or more, it converts it into a composite key, or it's known as a composite key. It doesn't say, hey, I'm now composite. It just has this key here duplicated two or more times. Just go ahead and click on the row header for one and go down or up to select the others. Or if it's nonlinear, then hold down the control key and click on the row header for another. And I've got a total of 3 highlighted, or the row headers are highlighted, 1, 2, and 3. And then come up here on the Design tab in the Tools group and click on Primary Key. And now we have, well, this might get a little bit confusing here, but between those 3 fields, we can't have any one of them be duplicated. So I can have duplicate manufacturers, duplicate date received, duplicates in the warranty field, but between all 3, I can't have more than one record that has the same manufacturer, the same date received, and the same warranty. Collectively, that is. I can have one record that has the manufacturer Atlas, the date received January 1st, the warranty yes, but I can't have a second record that has that matched. It can have the same manufacturer, the same date received, or the same manufacturer and the date received, but it can't have the same manufacturer, date received, and warranty, or the various combinations that you can see where you can have the same warranty and the date received, but the last one here, manufacturer, can't be the same, it's got to be different. So you can see how this can be a bit challenging, but To keep it simple, just think about that first name, last name. So if this was first name and last name, well, to go ahead and unassign the primary keys, let me click off. You can go ahead and click in any one of those and then just deselect the primary key and it removes it from all of them. You can just go ahead and, well, if that was first name and last name, you'd select primary key. And so they can have the same first name, you can have 5 Bobs, and you can have the same last name, 5 Smiths, but you can't have more than 1 Bob Smith collectively. Let's go ahead and remove that, come back up here and select asset tag and click there. And there we go, that just cleared out. Had to refresh itself because I was wondering why warranty was in bold. In any case, I clicked in it and clicked out and it removed the bold. And then finally we got the foreign key. Now the foreign key is the field you create in one table that will have the same data type value and relates to the primary key of another table. In other words, when you break your data down into the smallest, most meaningful parts, your tables, like I've got my computers here, then I'll have a table for employees. Well, each employee is going to have a computer, so how do I relate to them or link them up between the two? What you can do in this case, as one example, is I'd create a field over here in the computers table and call it the employee ID, or type in employee ID, and link the employee ID field here, known as the foreign key, because it's going to link up and relate to the primary key in the employee table, the field, the employee ID that the primary key would be assigned to. Or from the employees table, I can do it the other way around. I could have the asset tag listed at the bottom of the employees table. That would be the foreign key because that would relate to the primary key or the barcode, the asset tag in the computers table. And we'll go over this in more detail, but I actually want to introduce it to you because in the next training video, when we learn how to create relationships, we need to make sure we can relate these tables with primary keys and foreign keys. So my recommendation is that each table ought to have a field that contains unique values, the primary key assigned to it, and also relate to other tables so we can find out, in this case, the computers that are assigned to each employee in the employee table. Have perhaps maybe the employee ID below here in the computers table. That's going to link up again to the primary key assigned to the employee ID field in the employee table. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.